rural areas are not exposed to 21st century or whatnot. And they say that how can 21st century be key to creating global players if these people have less connection and they don't have the exposure and whatnot? My dear opposition and members of the House, do you think we as a government are dumb enough to not provide exposure towards the rural areas? Come on, think about it. We will actually provide exposure because we want every single one student in Malaysia to actually have exposure regarding 21st century learning. We want to create global players, not smart people. Okay, so next. We don't want to, she talked about conservative mindset. Okay, we don't want them to be conservative, hence we provide exposure. So how can they say that they will be conservative if we have already started doing this slowly by slowly? Come on, like my first speaker has mentioned, we initiated this in Johor, and sooner or later we will eventually spread it all over Malaysia. Just wait in a few years, you will see. Right now, moving on. Okay, the second argument was talking about difficult adaptability. All right, she talked about some students are fast learners, and some are not very fast. Now, she also talked about hard system, you have to take it a high level, very difficult and whatnot. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition is clearly downgrading the students in Malaysia. How is it even possible for you to downgrade students in Malaysia if you have not yet seen the results? Okay, we don't want to let our students be left behind. Hence, we propose today's motion. Hence, we introduce 21st century learning. We want them to be, along with the globalization, we want them to follow, we want them to compete on an international level. So, they said that hard system might be difficult for the students to answer and whatnot. Are you seriously downgrading our students again? They will be trained how to answer hard thinking skills, hard questions, in order for them to be able, to compete in an international level. Now, moving on to the first speaker of the opposition now. She also mentioned PT3 results. Okay, she talked about if the 21st century learning is indeed the key, why are the students' results low? Now, do you know, like again, I said PT3 was not a part of 21st century learning, and like my second speaker has mentioned, it was introduced briefly a few months before the exam was actually implemented. Now, students were obviously not prepared. Wait, maybe it was our fault. Mind the government, okay, maybe it was our fault as the government not giving time and whatnot. But again, we have implemented 21st century learning afterwards, after we see the results, after we saw the results being not very good. Okay, so now, her first argument was limited resources. She talked about rural area schools have inadequate facilities, and teachers ought to be of international level in order to teach the students, in order to make them compete on international level. Now, she also mentioned about we only focus on how effective this 21st century learning would be, and we failed to realize that even without 21st century learning, we have created global players, members of the House. She quoted Dr. Mahathir. He was a very smart student. He stood up from the rest. He stood up from all of his friends. Now, we want to show that every single student in Malaysia, every single student in one classroom will be able to be global players, to be all Dr. Mahathir. Why do you want only one people who can compete on international level when we can create more, hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people who can actually be on international level? Now, again, regarding the teachers must be of international level to teach. Now, are you actually, again, downgrading our teachers? You downgraded our students, now you're downgrading our teachers. Now, we, the government, have given this program a very long thought because we know our teachers are capable of competing. We know our teachers are able to actually educate these children to be able to let them compete on the international level. And we know that these teachers are keeping up with the globalization. Hence, we introduced 21st century learning to be implemented in our education system. Mind the opposition, you have to do proper research. Before we actually make a decision, we have done proper research. Because we know our teachers are all prepared. My dear educators, you are teachers. All of you are prepared for this. And that's why we introduced 21st century learning. So shame on you, my dear opposition, for not knowing and for downgrading our very own teachers. Now next, she said that rural area schools have inadequate facilities. Now, like my first speaker has mentioned, 21st century learning does not only based on technology and technology alone. Now, it incorporates group discussions, multiple users, gallery walks, and so on. Now, how can you say the 21st century learning relies in technology alone? We use so many things. 21st century learning is not only about ICT and ICT alone. Why are you narrowing the scope today? Why are you being narrow-minded? Now, that was all I could get. And now next is the PUI by the third speaker to one of my speakers, which is, before the 21st century learning program, our students cannot compete on an international level. He is accusing that we are saying that. Now, members of the House, we introduced 21st century learning program to actually ensure every single student gets the right exposure. Every single student gets the ability, gets the chance to actually compete on the international level and to be global players. Now, before this traditional way, which is we like to call the traditional way as chalk and talk. I believe you know what chalk and talk is. Now, only the so-called smart and successful students will be able to compete on the international level. Quoting Dr. Mahadi. We want every single one of the students in Malaysia to be able to compete on the international level. I know I have repeated it so many times, but I want to stress it to everyone, every member of the House, that we are proposing today's motion because we want every single student in Malaysia to be successful. We don't want only certain students who will be able to compete, will be able to, how do we say this, to be able to compete on the international level, to be leaders. Because global players, most of them are leaders, right? Now, we want every single one student, I've been repeating so many times, I don't know how many times I've said this, that what we want every single student in Malaysia to be successful, to be global leaders, to be global players. Now, as time apparently does permit, but I have nothing else to rebut. As the first two speakers were not very audible, but never mind. I would like to reaffirm our case today that this motion must be passed in Parliament. With that, I rest my case.